So we'll get this budget hearing started. This is a budget hearing for the research department. I'm Councilor Green. I'm joined by Councilor Majuk, Council President Hudson, Councilor Driscoll, Councilor Paniagua, Councilor Allen, and Councilor White. So Janet, I'll turn it over to you to present your budget.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry if you were waiting for me. WebEx kept telling me the meeting hadn't started yet, so I apologize.
No need to apologize, Janet. We just came back to. You're fine.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Counselor. So hi, I'm Janet Burke. I'm the Director of Research. Research Bureau in the city of Syracuse is primarily a grant writing arm of the city. We're doing grant writing and grant management, as well as special projects, being liaisons with state and federal funders, keeping data and for city employees that need information, and helping any department that needs any help with any sort of information, work with them. My budget hasn't changed much since last year. Although we are going to have a fiscal grants person who is I'm going to be sharing with finance, and I believe that person is going to be in the finance. Can I answer any questions for you?
Any questions from any of the councilors on research? That's good, Janet. You got a pretty.
Thank you for saying that. I wasn't sure you heard me.
Councilor Green, I just have one question. Okay, historically, and I used to work in your office here many years ago, all the departments ran their grants through the research department to make sure that they were getting expert advice on how to, meet the filing dates and everything. It seems that we've got, not just in this administration, but over the years, we've gotten away from your office being the clearinghouse of all grants. Think we're going to return to that?
Well, I certainly think that is probably the gold standard. I think part of the problem is there are so many grants and so many different experts in the area that, for example, planning, if planning has a grant, we are almost always involved in every application. There are very few that we don't know about or we don't touch, but not everything with this department. I would love to get back to that, but with the two people that I have in this department, it's a little overwhelming to be able to do that work and be able to the departments in the way that they.
I will jump in and mention Frank Kaliba, the Chief Administrative Officer. To your point, Clerk Kapanis, we do think that grant management centralized is, as Janet put it, the gold standard. Our outside auditors agree. And we think the ARPA funding may be a good opportunity to bolster the department's ability to manage grants so that there's at least some level of oversight for all the grants. Particularly, as Janet said, when it comes to applications, everyone tends to look to Janet for advice and support. When it comes to grant management, perhaps not as much, and we're looking to bolster the office's ability to do that.
The one thing I'd like to follow up on, when I was there, which was in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, we had the people in our office up there that worked with police and fire, and they were actually funded by grants because they were such good grant seekers. The grant paid for the grant writer's position. I'm just wondering if we're missing opportunities to get funding for our grants people by not having them consolidated in one department.
John, that's a great question. There are very few opportunities anymore with that for that type of reimbursement. Federal grants sometimes do offer an indirect cost rate that we could use. And we do use that when it's applicable. With the previous administration hadn't wanted to utilize that very often, but we have done that more often in this administration.
John, a quick question for you. How many people, when it actually everything was in the heyday, how many people did you have in your office?
Well, when I first started here, well, I've been here 16 years or so. There were 9 or 10 of us.
Wow. And
And
there's
I
how many
think
now?
probably John would even tell you, I think there were more before that. So, but when I came, there were 9 or 10 of us.
So how many are left?
I have one a management analyst and one clerk too. I'm in position for a grants procurement specialist, and so that would bring us up to a total of 4. We haven't been more than 4 in the last 10 years.
So let me ask this question to Frank. So Frank, if the council so thought that they wanted to fund a few more positions in research, what could we do there?
So I think that the two things that are really lacking, President Hudson, are the grants development, as Janet said. Most grants, particularly government grants, but to some extent private philanthropy as well, no longer allow administrative costs, so there's nowhere to charge it. So if we put that position on city payroll, we'd be doing more grants development. And we'd also be able to do more grants management. Right now, there's a number of concerns that our external auditors have expressed about our ability to provide centralized oversight to reimbursement requests, for example. So Janet's team is just stretched completely thin. So those are the two positions that we would really look to bolster.
So I just to piggyback on what Madam President said, I think it would make more sense if we are trying to consolidate
So much time.
the grant effort to one department to really think and really put some good thoughts into adding more position to be able to help the Janet and their team. So is it possible to maybe have something in writing, Frank, in terms of putting a proposal forward and increasing the number of folks at the research department? Because I think it makes sense to increase their numbers.
Sure. We're in the, Janet and I have already started talking about what it would look like to potentially put it in for an ARPA request, but for the operating budget, we could do exactly the same thing. Certainly, Council would be happy to do that.
I want to also point out from a historic perspective, one of the things that the grants department does is follow up on the filings for the grants. For example, in the prior administration, we lost a lot of park grants because we didn't file properly, and then we didn't end up getting the money. So that's why it's important that the department head stand with the grant department if they want to take credit for finding the grant, but that it actually be done by the granting office because they have the expertise to make sure all the paperwork gets in and we don't lose the grant.
John, just to answer that, that is one of the things that research has really gotten their arms around. And really, as we are now the DASNY experts, that was where the parks had the problem years ago, was with a lot of the member item money. And that is completely up to date, and we are right where we need to be with that. So I'm very proud of that because it took us a few years really to be able to pull all of that together.
I hope you don't think I was directing.
Completely
I hope
agree.
you don't think I was directing that at you. I was saying that the Parks Department just
Oh, I
didn't have the
didn't. I know.
expertise.
No, I did. I absolutely didn't. But I agree.
The other tool that we are looking into, although I've not made a decision about, is PeopleSoft has a capital projects module that can be used for grants management. Ultimately, the school district looked at it and made a different decision for their both capital management and grants management. But I am of the mind that PeopleSoft, for better or worse, is our core system. It is our ERP. We bought it as an ERP. We don't use it as an ERP. It's probably time that we did. So we're looking at turning that module on potentially in the next 12 to 15 months. And I think the need to manage what is essentially a $126 million collection of capital projects and grants just underscores the need to have some kind of management tool in place. And PeopleSoft is, as I say, for better or worse, the one that's immediately available to us. So we're looking at that as well.
Janet, how many grants do we on average apply for a year? Do you know?
So I will tell you the average in an average non-pandemic year, I will tell you probably about 40. Last year we applied for through this office 25. There were several funders that didn't offer grant opportunities last year because of their concerns about where their money was going or how the pandemic was going to work out. But we had 25, totaling $8 million. So and I was pretty proud of that, because in addition to that, we also manage millions of dollars. And so my concern is that by us focusing so much on the management, that we miss opportunities that we would be able to find or be able to mine or be able to dig for, that we physically don't have the time to do it.
No, and I'm asking that, Janet, because I think we have to recognize the power of grants and the heavy load that it takes off of city finance. You know, because I remember a few months back, or actually a month or two ago, that we applied for a grant for firefighters. It's going to fund that for 4 years. Imagine that's millions and millions of dollars that a grant does alleviate from the city. And for
Sure,
us
it's very powerful.
not pay attention to that, I think we are doing ourselves a disservice.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Janet, is there any kind of way, I know that the grants are scattered, but is there any kind of a way, and maybe Frank, you can help, that we can get the total dollar amount of grant funding that's come through the city? I'm going to say within the last, I would say 19 through 21.
I'm sure there's a way we could pull that together for you. I can
Because,
certainly
I mean,
work on that for you.
Yeah.
Okay,
sure
because
I
I'm
agree.
hearing what you're saying, and I know that I'm looking for a grant to come through to you from the state. So, I mean, I know there's grants still coming, and if we can't keep up with them, I think we're going to run into a problem. And I agree, Frank, I think it should be centralized, since we're talking about centralizing all of our different departments and areas. And I think that we need to try to get research some help, and we need to start pushing all of the grants into one point of contact. That's just my opinion.
No, I agree, Counselor.
No argument from us at all, President.
I'm like that now. That's all I got.
Any other questions on this?
I just want to make an observation. Over the years, I've noticed that, and I think we can work on a way that this could be done to everyone's satisfaction. Department heads like to come in front of the council saying, I found this grant money. Look at me, I did this thing. But they're not experts at following through on reporting. So we need to make sure that they get the credit, but that research or whoever the consolidated office does the work. And that's been the problem, is department heads want to get the credit that they found the money.
Of course.
And for me, John, it's even deeper than who found the grant, because we've lost some grants, because if you recall, people have come and said, well, we didn't get the grant. Well, maybe if we had the expert working on the grant, we may have received the grant. So that's all I'm saying.
And that
Absolutely.
in itself, Madam President, I remember about a couple of years ago when we lost that grant, and that was because of all of mismanagement of it being involved and just not following it properly and not filing the right paperwork. And we lost a lot of money, you know. So
Any other questions?
Pat Hogan's words, that's all I got.
All right. Okay, we'll close this hearing. So thank you all very much for your time.
it's Pastor
Thanks
Hogan.
very much.
Pastor
Have a
Hogan
good
is
day.
going to close it for us.